Trackside tales, insider advice, lessons from the paddock. Find it all here on the Sector 1 Motorsport podcast in partnership with Formula Careers. Hello and welcome to the Sector 1 Motorsport podcast in partnership with Formula Careers. On today's episode, I am joined by a racing driver who has won the British Women's Racing Driver Champion 2 years running and was a Caterham Graduates Champion. She is now putting her expertise into providing high-quality motorsport services as the Director of Alpha 7 Motorsport. Please welcome Amanda Anderson. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Sydney. It's great to be on the podcast today.
I know I've given you a bit of an introduction there, Amanda, but it'd be great to hear you kind of introduce yourself, explain who you are in your own words.
I think you did a really good job, to be honest. So I feel like I'm under pressure now. So I'm Amanda Anderson, and I started racing back in 2004 through a competition called Formula Woman, who was, a competition a little bit like X Factor to try and get novice female drivers onto the circuit. So that's really where my first on-track action sort of started. And then from there, raced Caterhams with the Caterham Graduate Series. Did that for a couple of years, and then got an amazing opportunity to race GT cars. So did some GT racing in 2014, 2015. And then with all these great things, the budget runs out. So took a break from motorsport really for a good couple of years. COVID came along and of course wrecked a lot of things for a lot of people. And then back in the late end of 2022, I thought, oh, I've still got this bug. I just can't get rid of this racing bug, as we all get it. And I said to my husband, I need to go back racing. Shall we get another Caterham? Should we go racing? So we decided to buy another Caterham. And he said, "Oh, I'll mechanic your car for you, and we'll do it as a pair." That lasted about a week, and he turned around and went, no, I'm going to need a Caterham too. So we had two Caterhams, and then we had a friend that also wanted to go Caterham racing. So that was really where Alpha 7 was born, because we suddenly had a team on our hands. So now we're literally finishing our second season, of which we won the 150 championship in the Caterham Graduates. And we're already planning for what 2025 will be. So it's a really exciting time.
Amazing. Now, obviously, you speak about having the bug for racing there, but when did motorsport first show itself in your life?
Ah, it's a question a lot of people ask actually, and it actually boils down to Martin Brundle. I blame Martin Brundle. For those avid F1 fans that are listening to the podcast, back in 1996, he had an epic crash at the Australian Grand Prix and rolled his Jordan, I believe it was at the time. And somehow that got me a little bit interested. It was just on replay. And for some reason, this epic crash that Martin Brundle had sort of caught my imagination a little bit. And from then, just convinced my dad to take me go-karting. But he never wanted to buy a go-kart or run me around the country, as many parents don't want to do. It's a big investment. So I got a part-time job at a local go-karting track, and I did that for about 6 years. And sometimes we underestimate what our first jobs in our lives actually give us. And this opportunity at Ancaster Kart Racing literally taught me everything from how to engage with customers and people, how to organise events, how to be professional and run events. And that set me up then to become a teacher. So I spent a lot of time, 20 years in education. But it's those skills in my first job being a go-kart marshal that really built me up for the rest of my professional career, if I'm honest.
That's amazing. And Formula Woman, you partook in that. How did you find out about it?
Crikey, that's a good question. How did I find out about a Formula Woman? The year before I did it, it was on TV actually. They were doing it with Mazdas. It was on TV. At the time, it was a lot like Pop Idol, and yeah. So I just signed up, and I just had to give it a go.
And getting a win, what does that feel like?
Um, it's a little bit on the bizarre thing because my first race experience with Formula Woman, I won my first race. I'd never done any sort of track racing. I literally turned up not expecting the world. And it was a bit of a fairy tale weekend, really. It's Motorsport is the roller coaster. There's real highs and there's real lows, and to start it off with such a mega high um, made me realize, yeah, this is something that I need in my life, and I've got to continue doing it.
And did winning championships, did that further motivate you to carry on then?
I think so. I think I have such a competitive streak, which is quite hard to tone down at times. Um, but I think I always had the ambition that I wanted to put a championship run together. And it's not just about a one-off performance. It's about performance that's sustained over a period of time. So to actually win a championship with the graduates in 2013 really was a dream come true.
And you had a bit of a transition semi-professional to Brit Car and the GT Cup. What was that like? Tell us all about that.
That was pretty epic, to be honest, and quite a step up from racing Caterhams. I think one of the real transitions is, of course, going to slicks, much bigger cars, much more power. But the buzz that you get, I mean, those cars just, I call them sort of hum and hustle on a track, and you can get them moving a little bit. I think the nice thing about that is I did it with my partner or husband now at the time. So we were sharing a car and it was a proper team effort. And you go from sort of Caterhams, which is very much I'm a driver, I'm driving for myself, to racing in Brit Car or GT Cup. You end up racing more as a team. And I really enjoyed racing as a team. It's not just about you, it's about how we can do this together. So that was a really amazing experience.
I'm curious, out of all of your racing experiences, is there a massive standout memory in your head being like, yes, that is why I race kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. One takes me towards Spa and racing in the rain, and they wouldn't let F1 drivers race in that sort of rain at Spa when I was there. But that's probably not really the highlight. That just petrified me, to be honest. I think the highlight probably was getting a GT Cup pole at Silverstone. I hadn't had too many experiences on fresh new slicks. So I think that's probably my sort of career highlight in that sort of terms.
You mentioned being petrified then racing in downpours in Spa, which we all know how it can rain there after seeing some of the Formula One races there recently. How do you, as a racing driver, say no to that fear and still manage to get behind the wheel and drive?
I'm still working on it, to be honest with you, Sydney. And I think it's not for me. It's not when I get in the car. It's not a fear around I'm going to hurt myself, or it's more of a fear of the damage and the knock-on effects that that then has on your budget and those sorts of things. I think if I had an amazing sponsor and you had that buffer, I think the mentality would then be very, very different. But the margins in the wet, are very, very fine. And you see these F1 drivers, especially with Brazil recently. That's where they earn all their money, and I mean, it's really amazing to see.
And you've mentioned Alpha 7 Motorsport already. Can you talk us through what exactly are they? Who are they? What do you guys do?
So Alpha 7 is a Caterham motorsport team that started with my husband and I. So we met Caterham Racing and both have a massive passion for it. And we really wanted to plug a little gap in the market where we wanted to have a high professional team that also wanted to have a good social and community aspect to it. So, being a female racing driver, and quite often, I think this year I've been in our club, sadly, one female out of 55 racing drivers. So I'm always waving the flag for females. We wanted to create a team that was more inclusive, that invited families along to come and support and get involved in what we do. So our daughter comes, my mother comes, our drivers' families also come, our race engineers' partner also comes. So it's much more of sort of a family that's going racing, and we do it together. So we hire race cars, we run other people's cars. The last 2 years we've been running in the Caterham Graduates Championship. Next year we're looking to also run in the 7 Racing Series. And we've been fortunate. I mean, we've had some great drivers. So this year we supported Jamie Elwood onto his 10th Caterham Championship. I mean, to win 10 is just absolutely phenomenal. But then, and also another highlight for Alpha 7 this year is we've taken a Caterham Road customer from being a complete and utter novice to completing his ARDs, to completing his 6 racing signatures, to now be a full-fledged racing driver. And one of the bizarre things I think is that when Ian and I started Alpha 7, it was very much win, 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 win. Whereas now it's very much we want to be developing drivers, no matter what stage of their careers or what their ambitions are, but to enable them to go from a starting point and to progress is really super important to us.
And as a racing driver, I imagine that puts you in a better position to be able to nurture other talents, like you've mentioned there, right?
Yeah, I think it's part of one of our unique offerings. Our customers really quite like it. The fact that we know what it's like to be sat in Parc Fermé or assembly area, the buzz of winning a race or finishing a race that's been exhilarating, or from the nerves of sitting in assembly area, when you've got 20 minutes and you're sat there, you're not really too sure when you're going to go out, you're not sure what the weather's going to do. And that can be a really nerve-wracking time for a driver. And because we've experienced it, I think that really helps us to, provide a high quality service to our customers that we can relate to.
And other than that, being able to help the driver specifically, what other skills do you think that you've had as a racing driver that have kind of followed through and are now invaluable into doing what you do now?
Skills as a racing driver, I think sometimes you learn how to be a little bit more patient. I think when you first go into racing, the red mist and everything, it's I want that corner now and I need to have it now and I'm going to get ahead of you now. And I think with experience comes a little bit more patience and a little bit more strategy behind it. You don't have to be the first one into that first corner all the time. You can have a bit more strategy. I think it also enables you to communicate a lot clearer because you've been through a lot of those experiences, and just understanding rules, regulations, and how these events operate and work, I think is truly important.
I'm curious, I was just thinking about it then. You mentioned earlier about how with Alpha 7, you're really pushing the whole family feel. Your families do come to the track. So when you do, unfortunately, as every racing driver, every racing team has a bad weekend, frustrations, how do you manage that whilst having that family environment around you? Because I'm that person I don't want to show my frustrations in front of like my family. I'll be like, just let me go to my bedroom and be angry. Like, how do you manage that?
I think it's a good question. It's like it depends on who the person is. There are some people that really don't like their family being around them because they don't want the pressure and they're there and they feel like they've got to perform. We've got other drivers that absolutely love that time out. So you can. There's a lot of dead time in a race meeting. You're hanging around, you're waiting after maybe qualifying to a race, and a lot of the times those families, enable them to have that sort of break away and that mutual support. I think it's about getting to know the drivers and what makes them tick and what their frustrations are. And some drivers just need to be left alone. Others need to be coached through it. Some drivers need to be told, you did this well or you did that wrong, and you need to be as clear as that. So I think it's understanding the drivers that make that important.
So let's pretend, Amanda, it's a race weekend. Can you talk us through a typical race day for you and your team at Alpha 7?
A typical race day. Okay, so a typical race day, our mechanics and engineers will probably be at the circuit 6, half 6, just making sure everything is ready. They get there early, and that's not because they've left everything to do first thing in the morning. It's just that they want to make sure that they're ahead of the curve. And if drivers want to be there earlier, then we're open to receive them. I think it's making sure that we've got everything in terms of fuel, car setup. We're looking at the weather forecast. looking at the timetables, thinking about what time we need to be leaving our awning or garage to ensure that we're at assembly on time. Um, and then, generally speaking, we'll have either one or two sessions in a day. It might be qualifying in the morning and then a race in the afternoon. Or it might be that it's a Sunday. Quite often we'll just have one race on a Sunday, but it depends really on the program. We have what we call a hospitality unit. We've got this amazing hospitality trailer that sort of unwraps itself at a circuit, which enables us to have a dry, warm space for drivers to sit, either, liaise with sponsors or liaise with their families. We also have a TV in there, so when it's live streamed, you can watch it on TV. Or if it's not live streamed, you can watch the results on TSL timing, for example. So for me, if I'm not racing, I'm talking to drivers, making sure they're ready and they're prepared for the day ahead. If I am driving, then I'm probably getting pre-race nerves at the same time as all the other drivers, which you then have sort of a joke about sharing those pre-race toilet trips, should I say? And I don't think we need any more information on that one. And then it's just making sure people are at the right place at the right time, to be honest with you. Nice thing is, like owning a team, our race series tends to have two races that which I'm in one championship and there's another championship I don't race in. So the team will always be out supporting and watching those races if we're not in them. And that's a really good fun part of the day as well.
Do you ever sit there just itching when you're not on track and you want to be on track because it's not your race weekend?
All the time. Unless, of course, it's chucking it down with rain, and then I'm probably like, oh yeah, I'm not too worried about this today because it's not something that it's a little bit like Marmite, I think, racing in the rain. Racing drivers absolutely love it, or they find it rather intimidating. But um, I think it's an interesting one because I've always had that itch to be out on the circuit when I'm at a track, but I'm getting better at it now because I get more fulfillment watching other people achieve and enjoying it. And I never thought I'd be that sort of person that would say I'm quite happy supporting others. But when you've got drivers that come in with a massive grin on their face, just going, that was absolutely epic, and that was like the best lap I've ever done, or that's really rewarding as a team owner because you've effectively made that happen for them. You've supported them to enable them to have that car or that opportunity. And that is super, super rewarding.
Do you think you've got to that stage now where you can, really admire and be excited when you're off the track is because of your experience now as a team owner?
Oh, like I have admired all season our championship winning driver, Jamie Elwood. I mean, every time he goes out on the track, he is in that car thinking, I've got a job to do and I'm going to drive it as fast as I possibly can. And just watching him race, he's got such an amazing racecraft. It is just like a game of chess. He's quite happy to sit in second and just watch the person in front of them and think about what's my three moves ahead of what I need to do. And that's been such an amazing learning curve this year. So I have high admiration for those with incredible talent. It's just phenomenal to watch.
Now, we've got your, memorable. Can I speak? Probably, hopefully. We've had your memorable moment from when you were racing yourself. I'd love to get one of those similar feeling moments for yourself as a team owner. Is there any particular memories that stand out as being incredible?
I think as a team owner, when you get your first win, that's always when it's not you driving yourself, but you know that you've built a car that's then gone on to win. That's incredible. But I mean, this year we had our first 1-2, so to come across 1-2 was just absolutely amazing. But I think ultimately it was Jamie clinching the championship at Anglesey with one round to go. That was he did it in style. It was three race wins from pole position with three fastest laps. You can't make that up. That sort of end of the scenario. And just the feedback that he's been giving the team this year, to be able to please a 10 times champion and provide him with a car that's done what he needs it to do, has just been absolutely truly amazing.
I know in motorsport, it's one of those things where everyone comes in from different routes. There is no one planned route for any job in motorsport, really. But for anyone listening thinking, oh my goodness, I need a racing team. I need to have this. I need to have championship winning cars. What advice would you give to them before they get into it?
In terms of a career as a driver or as a mechanic or an engineer?
Just having a team, owning a team, being at the top.
I think owning a team is actually really quite challenging because ultimately, you need a lot of money to be able to invest in the right kit. But also, that starting point is challenging because you're ultimately trying to find people that are going to spend an awful lot of money with you with no proven track record. So my husband and I were quite lucky. We're both Caterham champions, so we've got our own driving record that sort of, was a springboard really for us to be able to move into that space. And we're keen racers, so we're racing ourselves. In terms of starting off, I mean, it's a first step in everything. You've just got to do it if that's the sort of dream that you want to do. But just be aware, motorsport has highs and it has lows, and you've just got to have that level of resilience to keep pushing forward and aiming high. It's just always about aiming high and having high ambitions.
I'd love to talk about inclusion and diversity, obviously both being females in motorsport. You mentioned earlier about being, the only woman in the room, driver's briefing, for example, just being the only one in the room. Did that ever feel daunting, or did it kind of feel like, unfortunately, normal?
Um, I think when I was younger, it just never even crossed my mind. It was, uh, I want to drive cars and I'm going to do it. I had that level of determination that it just didn't really matter. I look back on my early days in motor racing and I probably didn't even hear or see any sort of inequalities. It just absolutely passed me by because I was so driven to, yep, I want to do this. And I've never really been somebody that has to follow a crowd or have a big group of friends that I need to do it with. So I sort of made that decision. I think now I'm much more open to how there may be some sexist language within the paddock, or how the barriers do present themselves in motorsport. But I'm an I'm just a true believer that motorsport, it doesn't matter what gender you are. As soon as you put on a racing helmet, it really doesn't matter. I think some of the more powerful cars become more physically demanding. And yes, okay, you might need to find yourself in the gym and getting yourself a little bit fitter. But there is absolutely no reason why females can't compete at the same level. They just need the opportunities to, and they need to start early and get through those grassroots.
And would you say opportunity is one of the biggest barriers standing in the way of female in motorsports, just that they're not being offered the opportunity?
I think it's a difficult one to answer because I think the barriers are quite similar to men getting into motorsport. Ultimately, it comes down to budget, and it doesn't matter what gender you are, your budget is always going to get in the way of you taking that first step. I think also to a certain degree, it's around role models. In your stereotypical family, a young girl is probably going to be asked if they want to go horse riding over, do you want to go karting? So you've got to have some fairly forward and open thinking parents, I think, to open up those doors. Um, but we've got some great programs that are providing role models for females now. W Series, what was F1 Academy, Girls on Track. And Daytona Motorsport are doing a karting series this year, the Jamie Chadwick karting series. So there are opening up opportunities for females to get involved. But until young girls today can see themselves doing it, so they've got role models to look, oh, they're doing it, I can do it. I think we're going to struggle, but we are moving in the right direction.
To women and girls listening now, what advice would you give to them in pushing on and getting into motorsport?
Just do it.
Yeah.
Sounds like a Nike advert, really, but um, seek out if it's something that you really want to do. Try your local karting centre. Try reaching out on Facebook, LinkedIn, or any other social media platforms for for increasing your network. And generally speaking, the ladies, women that I speak to are always open to having a conversation with others, to support others. The British Women's Driving Club is a great network for you to meet people and ask for advice. So, yeah, just if it's something that you're passionate about, you've just got to not let anything stop you.
And we're coming towards the end of our time together, but I'm curious, with Alpha 7, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned as a team owner, as a racing driver, that you think others in the industry could benefit from?
Oh, wow, where do you start? You're always learning lessons, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I think the art of reflecting back and hindsight is an amazing thing. But um, I think I've already commented on if there's something you want to do, push forward and aim high, have ambitions. Number two is it's all around people. It's the people that you communicate with, the people that you network with, the people that come on board to help you. Um, and surround yourself with people that are better than you because that'll help you move forward. Don't get yourself dragged down with people that are negative Nellies. You know, go with people that are going to support you and have your back. And I think the last one is just have an open mind and see where it takes you because you never know. So say yes to as many opportunities as you possibly can.
Well, Amanda, I think that's the perfect way to round up our time on the podcast today. I've got to thank you so much for your time, your insights, your knowledge. Thank you so much for sharing a bit about your story with us.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Sydney. So thank you very much for having me on the podcast.
And thank you everyone for listening and or tuning in. We'll be back with another career talk very, very soon.